So we're real excited to have Pat giving us his talk today on the annual Fireman's Barbecue. I think it's probably one of Pat's top 10 favorite subjects to talk about. Is that right, Matt?
Probably top one.
Top one. Yeah, but a wealth of information. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. Great tradition in Murrieta.
One of our few.
What's that?
One of our few traditions.
And in case, I'm sure Pat's gonna say this, but just in case you don't know, this is the second oldest community event in Riverside County.
Oh, wow.
It's only surpassed by one other event, the
Which
Ramona
was?
Bowl in Hemet,
Gotcha.
which is just celebrated 100 years.
Wow.
So this is the second oldest community event, so
Amazing.
a lot of pride here.
Yeah.
So Pat,
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. So today about Murrieta Fire Department's historic barbecue. So the barbecue is, like Jeffrey said, second or third longest running event in Riverside County. Started in 1948 and continues to this day. Ramona Bowl was a long runner. We've also heard that the Indio Date Festival runs in the same thing, but since COVID, there were all these people all of us, including the barbecue, were shuttered over a day or two, or missed their events. We also had heard that the Ramona Bowl had been dark for a few years. So, however, we're counting days. And a little bit of barbecue trivia. So, as we go through the presentation here today, you'll notice the departments started in 1947. The first barbecue was in 1948, but this year is the 78th barbecue. So it doesn't really match if you do the math. 1997 was the department's 50th anniversary. The fire chief at that time said, well, let's just bump it a year so the two match up. So they did, chiefly prerogative, so now they match. So this was a pretty common sight around town. Get my pointer going here. Whoop. Go back one. Defeated by technology. Les there, this is his dad. His dad was a founding member of the department. Les, John, his brother, and his brother Lenny all served on the department over the years as volunteers. And also all four of the family members are veterans. So I have to watch to make sure I'm truthful today. A little bit of history. The department formed on April 16, 1947. After one more fire here in Murrieta, the town got together and decided we need fire protection. So they formed a volunteer fire department. So a lot happened during that first year. So this is the founding crew. There's Lawrence Dunham, that's Les's dad. Vic Garrison was the assistant chief. The original fire station was built on property that Vic Garrison and the Garrison family had donated to the fire department. So Clayton Erdell, Willis Thompson, Oscar Madison, Floyd Rail, Raymond Thompson, he was the founding fire chief. He was actually probably the only professional firefighter on the department at that time because he was a firefighter at Camp Pendleton. And of course, Mark McKern, Les's dad Lawrence, Boy Burnett, and Ted Shell. So this was the founding crew that started it all. Like I said, during the first year, a lot happened. They bought their first fire truck. The community got together, earned $1,400, and they bought this military surplus truck. The department still has this truck. They're always trying to give it away, and I always tell them they need to keep it. So maybe the Historical Society will end up with it, I don't know. Anyway, it was in service up until into the early 1980s. The advantage of that truck is you could drive it and pump water at the same time. Also during that first year, they built their first fire station. Like I said, the Garrison behind the Murrieta Machine Shop donated a piece of property, and they built a fire station. The history says they used volunteer and conscript labor, so whatever that meant. So, this is I think about the earliest picture I've ever been able to find. The founding crew, the truck, and this picture are probably the earliest pictures of the fire department. There was also, a water trailer apparently purchased with this. I've never seen a picture of it. Les has first-hand experience with that trailer. Maybe he'll tell you about it afterwards. So during this time, they got the fire station built, and they also, by the fall of that next year, by that fall of 1947, they become a fire protection district. They petitioned County Board of Supervisors, got a tax assessment district, formed a fire protection district, like a cemetery district or school district, and then became a funding mechanism, got a board of commissioners that in turn basically leased the Murrieta Volunteer Fire Department on the benefit of the district. So during that first year, they just, to celebrate the opening of the fire station, they decided they were going to have a celebration, which was the first barbecue in April of 1948. So the gentleman on the left, or the right there, is Gib Miller. Coy Burnett's dad's on the left there, I don't know his first name. Gib Miller was a local talent, rancher, old cowboy, roughhead kind of guy. And so they contacted him, and he taught the fire department how to pit barbecue. So over all these years, it was traditionally a pit barbecue, right in the ground pit barbecue. We'll cover a little bit of that history later, but there were years that there was not a very successful barbecue from rain. And then one year in the early 1970s, they tried to cook steaks instead of barbecue. The town rebelled, so they went back to the pit barbecue. Anyway, old Gib there, he was the one that taught them. So this is a couple years later, so they've added a lean-to on the side of the station, put the Murrieta Volunteer Fire Department sign up, and ready for another barbecue. This is probably a year or two afterwards. They finally figured out that the barbecue was a hit, and it generated money for the district. So over the years, the enterprise supported a lot of other entities in town. The Murrieta Machine Shop still has that Murrieta Volunteer sign. I've been trying for the last 45 years to get it from them, unsuccessful. Ned's dad actually painted that sign. It's on the back of a porcelain tire sign, so I can understand why they don't want to get rid of it. So this was a community event. Everybody was involved. The ladies all shown here were all prominent in the community, and they were the support system. Most of them were wives of the volunteer firefighters, and some weren't. So when you get ready to put on a barbecue, as it got bigger, more involvement. But also, again, it was a support for the community, and later on I'll show you some examples of just how many people were involved, but it was the premier event. So took a lot of staff work to get it done. So these are some of the ladies, technology here. That's Annette's mom there, that's Les's mom there, and then the rest, I could probably name most of them. How about you, Les, you know all of them?
I did.
I did, yeah, me too, once upon a time.
I know the names.
Huh?
I know the names.
Yeah.
I'm glad he keeps using my name because I can't remember it.
So, Brony Wicker, Tavy Thompson, her last name is Manley, Lucy, help me out there, Mom. Annette?
Scotty Houston's wife.
Margie.
Margie, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Margie Madison, she's a Barth.
Jensen.
Jensen, yeah. So, anyway, you see these faces all the time in town, and you would see them at the barbecue. So, like I said, the barbecue was a community event. People would travel for it. People look forward to it all year. But, so we start working in the barbecue. Every year they had a list. Every year you got on a list. So it would tell you what you're doing. This particular list, when the year 1958. So in my many files of the Murrieta Fire Department history, I have dozens of these things that tell who was doing what. And so a little bit of barbecue history and trivia that even went into my days, starting in the 1980s. If you had a detail, that was your detail. And you never got out of that detail. So there was only one way to get out of the detail, so you would coerce somebody to come and help you. And then they'd say, yeah, okay, I'll come and help you this year, and then next year you didn't show up. And so somebody else got it. So for years, I had the meat cutting detail, and so one year I trained a guy, and then I just didn't show up. So he was unhappy. But then a few years later, I used to help Richard Kern fire the pit. And then one year he didn't show up, so I ended up like in a 15-year project. So anyway, just to show a list of who's who in the zoo on the fire department and people. About this time, they were cooking about 600 to 700 pounds of beef. And they were using a couple cords of wood, the old fire station. The barbecue pit was right behind the fire station. Over the years, we've had barbecue pits about all over town, so. What do you need when you have a barbecue? You need wood, a lot of wood. So they were using, in the 50s, they were using a couple of cords of wood. As the pit got bigger and the crowd got bigger, they needed more wood. This particular 1970s vintage photo, we got, at that time, even when I was a kid in the 60s, we'd go on wood details. Sylvian Meadows up on the Santa Rosa Plateau. We'd go up there and cut oak wood. Well, traditionally always used oak wood, but a lot of other things ended up in the pit too. So as long as it wasn't furniture with stuffing, it was pretty much fair game. So later on, it was like, you know, if you had records to get rid of, the night they fired the pit off, we'd throw that in there. Later on, when you confiscated fireworks, you'd have a pyro spectacular, you throw them all in the pit. Anyway, so yeah, we cut wood at Sylvian Meadows back in the day. We needed a lot of wood later on. Later on into my career, in the 1980s, we were cooking about 2,200 pounds of beef.
Wow.
So we need a lot of wood. So traditionally, we cut wood, or in the early years, up on the Santa Rosa Plateau at Sylvian Meadows, and then in the outlying areas. But after the city incorporated in 91, because of all the development, all the nuisance water from the housing tracts was running in all these green belts, was killing all the oak trees. Now, it was kind of odd because the mature oaks were dying, but under every mature oak that was dying, there were hundreds of other ones coming up. I don't know why, they couldn't tolerate the water. So I made a deal with the Community Services Department. I said, you know, you got these dead trees, what are you going to do with them? No, we have to cut them out because they start falling. I said, well, I'll get them. And so I happen to know the public work guys real well. And so I said, hey, can I help you out? Can you help me out here? And so they would come by, and as you can see, we cut a lot of big wood.
Yeah.
And we would haul it to wherever we were going. A lot of times we've had all over the place. The last 10, 15 years, the public work yards down in south end of town, they dump it down there, and then we have a wood cutting detail, myself and whoever else, and I take 15 sledgehammer handles because apparently nobody knew how to run a sledgehammer to use splitting mauls, and they would, you know, break the handles out of my sledgehammer. Anyway, so yeah, we used a lot of wood, and if I could, they would help me if they were busy. I'd skid it out to the road, and they would load it up in their dump trucks and haul it away. Another picture, I would get the crews to help me. Usually the guys would help me cut wood until they got poison oak, and then they would never come back. And so I could never get them to help me after that. So I went through a lot of crews. I got a lot of poison oak. But we usually wrote it off as training because we could. This is the crew here. Two of the guys are still working. This guy in the center there, Dean, passed away a few years ago from cancer, so job related. The two guys there, they're getting ready to retire. But I tried for years to get something to skid wood with, and ended up with a rough terrain forklift. You can move a lot of wood with a forklift, it's not optimal. So we'll get into the crux of the barbecue. So what do you need when you do a pit barbecue? Beef. So in the earlier in the years, they were using, I don't know what kind of meat they were using. I remember Merle Jensen and the guys that would tie the roast and then process them that way. Later on, we got these shoulder clods, and they're a big cut of meat. They're about this big, and like I said, we get 2,200 pounds of it. So
They're about 100 pounds.
yeah, so we would put those through a processing line to get going. So how it normally worked was the meat cooked 24 hours. And so we would light the fire. So the barbecue was always on Saturday, or Sunday rather, now they have it on Saturday. So we would start the fire Friday night, we start about 10 o'clock, and we burn it all night. Because the last barbecue pit I had, though we have a picture of it here near the end, it was 8 feet wide, it was 25 feet long, and it was 15 feet deep.
Holy cow.
And so we load it up and burn it all night, so you'd have a bed of coals like this, so you need a lot of wood. So you process the meat Saturday morning, get it all ready, we'll go on the ground and we'll cook 24 hours. and then Sunday morning it would be ready to go. This is just the start of the process. So we started by cutting them in half, and so it would be easier to handle to process them. So they come across the table, we cut them in half, and then move them on down the line. Next stop was bacon and garlic. So as I said before, Gib Miller was the old barbecue guy, so this was his recipe. So sometime right before the Saturday morning prep, they would take cloves of garlic and roll them up in a strip of bacon. And so they would poke a few holes in the roast and stuff the bacon and the garlic in. So traditionally, back in the early days, that was your breakfast that morning if there was anything left over. If you haven't had bacon, fried and garlic, you're in for a treat. So when I was a kid, that was when I was like 10 years old. That was a job you wanted when you were a kid, because, like I said, all the dads were on the volunteer fire department. My dad was a volunteer during the 1960s. Ness dad in the last part of the 1950s. Les's and his family all the way up from start to like 1975, I think, when Lawrence finally retired. And yeah, so the kids were oppressed labor, and so he did all kinds of things. I was always happy to work the meat prep line, but I didn't like the trash so much. We put the bacon and the garlic in it, and then move down to the salt and pepper station. A lot of pepper, a little bit of salt. You just roll them up in the bin there and get them all covered up, and then you tie them. So for years, the early days, the roast would be wrapped in muslin, unbleached muslin, and they were put in a gunny sack and then tied up with wire, and then would go in the pit. Well, about the 1970s, everybody started complaining, well, you know, you guys are using too much diesel fuel to start the fire, you know, the meat tastes oily, and everybody was having a fit. Well, they couldn't figure out why, because we normally start the fire with, you know, we throw a bunch of pallets in there, a bunch of wood, and use what's left over last year's drip torch fuel and start the fire. So what they found out was that the burlap sacks they were getting at the time were treated. Instead of the old-fashioned just plain old burlap, they had some kind of treatment on them that was actually leaving a really bad taste in the meat. And so then we switched to 2 muslin sacks. Actually, they weren't sacks, they were just strips, you just roll them up. So the one protected the meat and the one on the outside, because this was a pit barbecue, it went in the ground, you had to have a little buffer there. So they got wrapped up, and then taking a break as always. So it ended up, that's about what we put in the ground. That's 2,200 pounds of prep meat. A lot of these photos go back and forth over different years. This one happened to be the 50th anniversary in 1997. We still had our barbecue pit at that time over behind Fire Station 1 over here. So over the years, the fire station pits, the old station on C Street, the pit was in the back of the station. They used that same pit every year. And then when they moved up here, 1966, the pit was in the back here. So it's about where the crew quarters is now after they upgraded the station. We had a pit there, and then all across the back. Later on, the department bought the property next door where the daycare center was the public works yard. We had a whole bunch of different pits over there. Sometimes they'd last a year or two. Sometimes as they got so hot, by the end of the year, we just filled them in and dug another one. And then when the public works yard moved down south on Fig Street, we moved down there, and then we store all our wood down there and all that. Really nice to be good friends with the guys with all the equipment. So anyway, it got all wrapped up, ready to go. So this was one of the pits. This was this would have been on Saturday morning, just getting ready to go. So you can see there's still some bigger logs and everything. The trick was you had to break all those down because you wanted a solid bed of coals. And everybody says, well, you know, how did you do that? Well, you just worked on it all night, and you banged them, and if you couldn't get them out, they had to pull them out, because if they came up through the dirt, this was the early station, if they came up through the dirt, they'd burn the bags, and then you'd lose that particular bundle. Most people don't realize this is back to the fire station over here. If you've ever been back there, it doesn't look like that now. The cruise core is about where that is. The station over there was upgraded in 1988 and 89. When the original station was built over there, the second station, there was no crew quarters because the department was all volunteer. There was a kitchen and a day room, so there was no crew quarters. So later on, when the crews went paid in 87, they expanded the station. So this is loading the pit. So as you can see, after you got everything knocked and beat down, you put about a foot of dirt on top of it. And so that's why the bundles were double wrapped, because they went right on the ground. And so you would load the pit all up. There's another picture of it. And then you'd cover it up. So there'd actually be an air gap sometimes about that high. And so over the years, all kinds of different things. You throw a bunch of pipes down and fence posts and throw a bunch of tin on it and you throw a bunch of dirt on top of it. Later on out the public work yard, they let me use their tractor and their trench plates, which were really good, really fast.
Yeah.
The trick was you had to seal it totally. So you couldn't let any air into the pit or you just burn stuff up. So covered up, you mound the dirt all up on it, you soak it down real good, and over the next 24 hours, you check it. And if it got really hot, you see steamers coming out of it, you cover them up and go on. And it cooked 24 hours. So we'll put it in the ground on Saturday about 10 or 11, and you open the pit on 11 the next day for the barbecue.
That's a lot of work.
Was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Oh, haven't got to the worst of the work yet. So then, after the day of the event, this is 1960s vintage. That was their uniforms at that particular time. They wore those white jumpsuits. Cigars optional, and the hat really is nice. So they were the movers and the shakers of the barbecue that day. They're going, man, this stuff smells bad. So interestingly enough, the barbecue was unique. So I've ate a lot of barbecue over the years, and what I found out is either you liked it or you didn't. So a lot of people didn't. So this guy right here is Marvin Kern. He probably, before he passed away, went to 70, 75 barbecues from the beginning. Maybe missed 2 when he was in the service. He was a founding member. Probably maybe missed 2 in the late 1950s when he was in the Army. He did not like the barbecue.
Really?
He didn't like it, wouldn't hardly eat it. I liked it. My wife didn't. So you didn't bring any leftovers home, because they would basically, if you put it in the refrigerator, it would ruin everything in the refrigerator. Even your milk would taste like barbecue. So I had to keep it at the station. So there was always stuff left over, so the guys would take it and eat it for a month and make taquitos out of it. So it was good. Like I said, either liked it or hated it. Calhoun's barbecue, when they do their briskets, about the closest I've seen come into what that barbecue was. A little later picture, again, you can see the smoke coming out of there. We apparently put enough dirt because the bundles didn't burn, and what's left of the wood piles there in the back. So said anywhere we get wood, we stacked it up, and we burned a lot of wood. And of course, the usual Caltrans workers standing around. One guy's working, it's typical like fire department. One guy's working, and everybody else standing around watching, telling them what they're doing wrong.
Isn't that your brother?
That's my brother, yeah. He's really good at that. So after they came out of the ground, they would go to the cutting station. So Jim King there and Steve and Richard Kern, they were unwrapping one of the bundles, getting ready to cut it, so put it onto the serving line. You can see it's plenty hot. You have to really be careful. The guy on the left, Joe Wisdom, was a retired fire chief. He was famous for coming in when you cut the first bundle. He'd come in and sample it, and we got us a barbecue. I always liked it. The longer the pit was open, the more well done they got.
Yeah.
So it was always good. So along with the barbecue, you have to have condiments. Well, the Dunham family, that's Les's mom there in the middle, were the bean people for many, many years. Early on, they cooked the beans, and sometimes they were chili beans, if I remember right. But Lucy and Lawrence and probably Les sorted a lot of beans, and your grandma and everybody else. And so they cook them at home and then bring them down to the station on the day of the barbecue.
She cooked the sauce. I think that's what sauce.
Yeah, because usually there was a bucket of beans.
We got to where he was cooking 100 pounds of beans.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So over the years, there was all kinds of things got done, a whole bunch of different places. So the school was one, they or used the kitchen at the hot springs. So, yeah, right next to the gas can, right? So beans were the main thing. This was 1965. This was the last year at the old fire station. And that particular year wasn't a really good year because it rained a lot that year. And so back then they were starting the fire early Saturday morning and then putting the meat in the ground. Well, they opened the pit. Pit was full of water.
Oh,
So they pumped the pit out. That year it was too wet to get wood, so they didn't have enough wood. So the next Saturday morning or Sunday morning when they opened the pit, the meat wasn't done. So everybody got a little roast, they took it home, they cooked it, they brought it back, finished it off, and had a barbecue. So that's probably when the department went to the overnight, you can't have enough wood. But anyway, Lucy and a bean. A little bit later, they went high-tech, B&M baked beans. They, as far as I know, they're still using B&M baked beans.
huh.
The secret sauce with it was a little barbecue sauce, and so that's Dudley Sykes there, one of the old timers here in town. And then later on, the double boiler. Many years, because when you cut the roast, shoulder cloths have a fat flap on it,
Yeah.
so you can scrape that off. The meat was usually so well done you couldn't even cut it; you more of a shred. So you scrape that off, and then for many years you dump that in one of the B&M cans, and for $1 you could sell it for dog scraps.
Yeah.
So it was great. So if you didn't like the neighbor's dog, dump a couple cans of that over the fence. That'd be the gift that keeps on giving for about a week. So then the other condiment was coleslaw. So I had showed you a list earlier of detailed, right? 1988, we did coleslaw that year. So if you need a recipe to make enough coleslaw for 1,200 people, we have that. So when you cut 400 pounds of cabbage in your house, which we did, we borrowed a shredder from the school, but we had to cut it up and mix it. Your house smells like cabbage for a really long time.
Curtis Thompson done the slaw,
Yeah,
mixed it in his bathtub.
yeah.
We didn't do that.
So like Les was saying, there was a tradition in town, so Kurt Thompson always did that. Well, a little bit later we'll talk about the dance that was the night before, so by Sunday morning everybody was feeling a little under the weather. So they would go around town before the barbecue and they'd show up at your house and say, you want eggs or potatoes? Newcomers, what egg or potato? Well, they leave you eggs or potatoes, you boil them, and the day before the barbecue or the morning of the barbecue, we'd go around town and pick them all up and take them, and then Kurt would do that probably too, because he was always hanging out at the school over there at the cafeteria. So I'd go around, a lot of times I went around with Ira Rail, and he'd make me run and get the stuff. And then Kurt's over there, and he's all hungover, and he always had a cigar out this long. He always had some action in it. Probably, anyway, nobody nobody ever died from the barbecue, but it was, the crack up. I don't know when we quit doing that, so now, even in my day in the late 80s, we were buying everything except we were cooking the meat, so it was just easier and safer.
In the 60s, I think they quit farming all that stuff out and just started buying it.
Yeah. So then you had to get your ticket. This was the famous ticket booth for many years. So then you went to the food line. Oh, who are those two there? Supposed to be selling stuff, not eating the profits of it. This is Les's mom and dad at the old station. You go along the station, get your food, then you go back in the station, and you would sit down and have your dinner. Over the years, they kept adding lean-tos and stuff to basically accommodate the barbecue.
And we had our own tables too.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about them tables. So again, this is the serving line. And this is the serving line across the street at the fire station over here at Station 1. Most people anybody that works over there now didn't realize they built the fire station to accommodate the barbecue.
Really?
Because by then the barbecue was making a lot of money, and so they were splitting with the Town Hall Association. They were using it to buy equipment. They were
Wow.
supporting scouts and 4-H'ers and everybody else in the.
Wow.
They were getting Murrieta horseback, the riding club. So you come in the front of the fire station, which you can see right over here, and you go down, buy tickets from Les's dad. He was the money man. And you go in and you turn right in the hallway, and he had a Disney-style turntable, and there was a big hole in the wall there where the kitchen was, and they had a counter, and they would serve, and you go out to the at bay, and that's where you had your lunch. So when they did the remodel in the late 1980s, they closed that all up, and so most people don't even know what that was all about. So there was the platter, big helping of meat, coleslaw, potato salad, and beans. They always gave you coffee or a drink. Later on, the drink was with the meal, but later on, like the fire department auxiliary or the volunteer program, Explorer program would run a soda booth. So in conjunction with the barbecue, it was a big event every year. Oh, we'll talk about tables. The fire department had their own tables for many years. And they would just stack them up behind the station over here. And every year, one of the details was you had to fix all the tables.
They're made out of wood, all made out of
They
wood.
made it out of wood. And so finally, they reached a point where there were more nails than wood. And so they went into the barbecue pit for kindling. And then we started hauling tables from the school. And so you can see what kind of job that was. Because we had to have them there Sunday morning, and they had to be back to school by Monday morning. So after the barbecue, when everybody was cleaning up, they'd all go back on that semi, and then we'd haul them all back to the school.
Wow.
Later on, we moved from over there to over here. And so we used the community center to have their own table, so we didn't have to do that. So, like we mentioned, the barbecue was a community event. And so people would come, they'd spend the whole day. They'd look forward for the whole year. The department maintained sign-in books or registers. When you bought your ticket, you'd sign in, put your address, and next year they'd send you a postcard and tell you when the barbecue was. So even people that had lived in town and they were somewhere else, they always got notice that there was going to be a barbecue and when it was going to be. And so another barbecue tradition is on the table were always loaves of bread. So you didn't get a bun or a biscuit. They tried that for a few years. I made them go back to the bread. You can't have a sandwich on a biscuit.
Yeah.
And so the bread was on the table and barbecue sauce and all that stuff. So people would come and they'd spend the whole day. And the other thing, they would come and they'd bring their photos and they just reminisce. It was truly like a homecoming event.
Yeah.
Still is to a degree. So for the barbecue this year, we'll set up our historical booth over there and the Murrieta alumni booth. We also set up a hospitality booth. So it's just a table and chairs so people that come and it used to be really neat when it was all here because people could come here. So we try to accommodate that. And sometimes people bring some really unique pictures, so we try to capture all that. So again, just another picture. This was when the they were doing the barbecue in the App Bay over here across the street. So this was the 18th annual fire department barbecue. This was a flyer, was in the La Laguna Review, local periodically. So a questioning exhibit, one of the big things that used to go on with the barbecue was where the ball fields are today was a Gymkhana arena. So horses were big. They'd have an all-day horse show, arena, competition. And of course all the booths and all that stuff, all the civic groups. Arlene would sell her books there, and the garden club would be there and all that stuff. And then traditionally on Saturday night before the barbecue was the Fireman's Ball. So they would have a dance. So some of the proceeds over the years, they would have a dinner. They'd set up a dinner for all the volunteers and their wives. They would go somewhere, have a big dinner. They would go to Fallbrook or King's Cafe when it was open, or up to the King's Inn up in Sun City and places like that. But the night before the barbecue, they would have a dance. And so I always shuddered to think what would happen if they ever had a fire that night, because the first few years, until 1965, they had the dance at the old school. But then after they built the station over here, then they had the dance here. So they would back up the men's restroom, they take the window out, and they back their camper up to the window, and that's where the bar was. And that's where all the fun began. We talked about civic group, this particular photo, that's Annette's mom. PTC, Parent Teachers Club, was a big booster club for the Murrieta Elementary School. They usually, for many years, ran a cake booth. And so this was, probably early 1950s? What do you think, babe?
Yeah.
So, so everybody bring a cake, they cut it up, and they'd sell it, and that was their fundraiser. This was in Murrieta Live Wires, the local 4-H club. This was in the 1960s. They ran the drink booth, so. Murrieta Garden Club attended the barbecue for just over 40 years.
Wow.
And every year was their big fundraiser. They'd sell plants and all kinds of fun things. Even when I wasn't on the department, I was the hired help for the garden club. And the fire department auxiliary, big booster of the department, and that was one of the early members of it. They would run a t-shirt booth, all kinds of information. A lot of times they ran the soda booth. Like I said, they would give you a drink with a meal. But if you wanted another one or the kid spilled his drink, then you go buy one from the auxiliary. And all their proceeds over the years went to things like backboards, medical equipment. They bought the department defibrillators.
Wow.
They actually bought the department's first thermal imaging camera.
Wow.
Because that's what they did. They raised money, bucket brigades, early musters and stuff like that. So this was probably 97-ish. You would go in over there, and then at that time we were seating in the shop bays because we'd outgrown the apparatus bay up at the station. And so all these booths just went around everywhere.
Wow, holy cow.
So this was taken in April of 2013. So this was what it looked like about 6 o'clock in the morning. We've been burning that thing all night. We've done the last load in for it to burn down, so we get ready to prep the meat that morning. So at that time, it was me and all the fire explorers. Which was okay, because like I said, we hauled a lot of big wood.
Yeah.
So I'd go down and I'd saw the wood up when I couldn't get anybody else to help me. And then it just had to be cut up big enough or small enough that two of those guys could pick it up and throw it in the pit safely. So, you had to watch these guys, they're all kids, and you're 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you're half asleep and you're seeing them running and jumping across the pit.
Yeah.
So we never hurt anybody. A few splinters, that's about it. But what we didn't know at that time was this was the last pit barbecue. So we got ready after this barbecue in 2013. We started into the 2014 barbecue, and the city came down and said, if you're going to have a barbecue, you need a health department permit. And we said, well, we can't have a barbecue because we can't get a permit. Well, then you can't have a barbecue. So everybody thinks the health department put us out of business. Well, the health department didn't. So I called the health department again. The health department had known for years we did this barbecue. Some of the people over the years from the health department actually came to the barbecue. Never complained. We never made anybody sick. If they did, they didn't tell anybody. And but the County of Riverside Health Department will not issue a permit for an in-the-ground pit barbecue for public consumption. And we knew that. And so, we argued with the city manager, who was the driving force, and somebody else that remains nameless today ratted us out to the city manager. And so we said, okay, we'll keep going. So these 4 yahoos, me included, Steve Keene, me, Richard Kern, and Derek Dillinger, said, oh, okay, we're going to build a smoker. So that's what we did. Even though none of us ever built a smoker. Derek there on the right, he comes from kind of a Texas tradition of barbecue, though I found out he wasn't the expert he claimed to be. Anyway, so we started scrounging up material, and we all got together over the course of about 3 months and built this smoker. So it's a big one. You have to takes a forklift to move it. But it will hold about 350 pounds of meat. So what happened during this time was that we went from shoulder claw, they went to tri-tip, which I'm not a big tri-tip fan. So for a couple of years we tried the traditional salt, pepper, bacon thing. It wasn't really working out. And so they went to a rub. And so they still, this is the barbecue you get today. The only advantage was, this is all the wood it took to cook. We didn't need dump truck loads of wood because it's a forced draft smoker. This was the first run on it. The burner's back here, and then it came up and went up through there. Later on, next year we put forced draft blowers on it. So the idea now is the meat goes in there for about 4 hours, and then it goes on what they call a Santa Maria style open cooker. So goes in the smoker, and then it comes out and it finishes off on these. Then they slice it and serve it. Steve Keene there on the left, he was the guy that built the Santa Maria style smokers. So this is what it looked like. So we built all those racks. We basically built everything. The main body was a paint locker we had. So we sandblasted it, put all new fresh insulation in it, all new virgin metal inside of it. The tank in the back was a propane tank we got from somewhere. And other things, and so we put it together, but burned it out good and clean. It's been steam clean. Like I said, we put all virgin metal on the inside of it, so it actually works good. I'm not a big, like I said, I'm not a big tri-tip fan, but it came out really pretty good. So there's some of the end results. So on the 12th of April next month is the annual barbecue. It's on a Saturday. Traditionally the barbecue was on a Sunday. So after the pandemic, and when they moved to Town Square Park up here, they changed to Saturdays. Now ran by the Firefighters Association in conjunction with the department. For many years the department ran it. First the volunteers, and then later on, after the department went paid, it was a joint enterprise between the Firefighters Association and the department. By the early 90s, it was more of a public relations event. Instead of trying to make a lot of money on it, we priced it so people would come. And so emphasis was heavy on all the vendor. We sold vendor booths and gave away nonprofit booths. And then over there, then here, over the years, biggest problem I have with the barbecue over at Town Square Park, they have a lot of music there. We've had music before. We actually had a fire chief that was a great performer. And now over at Town Square Park, the bands think they're the main reason they're there, and so they're too loud for me. So they have a muster. Back in the late 1990s, the department explorers formed a muster team. So they have a competition, a competition that the muster teams can earn points toward their championships and all that stuff. Beer and wine garden, why fire department's selling beer and wine, I don't know, but we got into that. About the same time we needed, it was basically a concession. We let the fire association sell beer and wine for their help to put the event on. So anyway, they were doing it. So that kind of wraps it up, but I thought I'd throw one up here. Just hoping Les would show up. So I mentioned all Les's family commitments. So there's Les's dad, there's Les, and there's his brother John. Their younger brother Lenny was also on the department for a few years. So
He wasn't old enough yet, then.
he wasn't old enough, I know, yeah. You guys were young. So there's the gang. There's Lawrence Dunham, Ray Thompson was still the chief, Ira Rail, my dad, Merle Jensen, Ted Shell, Kurt Thompson, the famous mixer of coleslaw, Les, John, Harold McGaw, and Marvin Kern.
Wow.
So that's kind of all I have for you today. Any questions? You guys are now able to do your own barbecue.
Yeah, what was the population in Murrieta then?
Back when they started, what, 1,200 maybe if you went far
Yeah.
enough out of town?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Now I think we're, what, 114,000 now?
Yeah.
So the
that's
fire
small
district in the
town.
city is 37.5 square miles.
How many stations they have now?
5
Yeah.
5 stations, 7 companies.
Yeah.
So they have think right now they're running 3 engines, 2 ladders, 2 75-foot sticks as engines and 2 squads. So Station
those
6 is out on the east end of town off of Bridge Road out there. They're working on that station. So, Les, anything? Any memories of the barbecue other than glad it's over?
Worked my tail off.
Yeah.
Charged the meat prep.
You were the meat prep guy,
How
right?
long? Wasn't very long, about 3 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I got stuck with that because I was working at the Murrieta Market, and I knew how to butcher. He taught me how, so I got to do the meat.
yeah, I always liked working the line because Merle would tie the roast. And he had this funny knot that he'd go, and it was tight. So later on, apparently we went to a different, they had a different cut of meat because they always, and the roasts weren't very big, and we went to those shoulder claws. And they bought meat everywhere, so sometimes you never really know what kind of cut you were getting, I guess. So
It was basically a shoulder cut.
shoulder claws, yeah. Oh, you found it. Good. So, anybody got any questions? You guys can all pit barbecue now. Nett's family, they were great pit barbecuers. It's not an unknown tradition. So, except they put her poor goat in there one time, her pet goat. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank
and
you.
If you got any questions,
There's refreshments over here.
yeah.